Hello, my name is Dr. Kara Lawman. I'm going to be doing a short video on fear, looking at the emotional spiritual connection. I'm part of Rewire Life Coaching, a group of Christian life coaches who base our work on the emotional principles we see in the Bible and neuroscience research. Negative emotions often get judged in Christian circles. We read scriptures like this one I have in John 14. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. And in our desire to not be afraid, we judge our emotion. We get frustrated with it or feel guilty, or even deny that we're scared. In this current pandemic, we're all going to experience fear. Whether it's fear for our health or the health of others, for our finances, our company, our children's education, fear of the loneliness and isolation we're experiencing during lockdown, or fear of the world afterwards at the end of the pandemic. Experiencing fear isn't the problem. We are all going to feel scared at times. What matters is how we encounter our fear, learning ways to understand how it affects us and how to manage it, so that fear can be a visitor to our soul and not a resident, and we can get back to that peace that passes understanding that Paul talks about in Philippians 4:7. I want you to think of fear like a child in a car. You can't put it in the boot, but you also don't want it in the driving seat. So fear should never be ignored, but we don't want it to be in charge. So I'm going to give you 5 steps now that I hope will help you to encounter your fear, understand it, and learn how to manage it, so it's a visitor and not a resident. Step 1, become aware of your fear. Step 1, become aware of your fear. Some of you are laughing or crying at the moment, only too aware of how scared and fearful you are. But actually, fear is a very under-recognised emotion. So I'm going to just share some symptoms that might help you to become more aware. Bodily changes. When you're in fear, you trigger your threat response. Your amygdala fires, your fire alarm, and prepares you for fight or flight by releasing adrenaline and cortisol throughout your body, causing changes. Your heart might beat faster, your breathing be shallow, you might ache across your shoulders and neck or your whole body, your abdomen might have butterflies or pain. Your brain goes to mush, you can't think or concentrate or remember. If you experience any of these, you can gently ask yourself, what am I scared of right now? Another thing fear does is to affect your self-talk, your internal dialogue that you have. Notice, are you saying, what if? What if this happens, or what if that happens? Are you ruminating on something again and again? When you lay down at night, are you catastrophizing about a situation? These are all clues that you might be experiencing fear. Now, to those of you who've locked fear in the boot, you may not think fear concerns you. But just because you avoid experiencing it doesn't mean it isn't causing problems for you. Part of my work is working with CEOs, and one of the things I do with them is help them to recognise fear that is making decisions causing stress in their organisation. Often, if we lock fear in the boot, we end up blaming others. We get angry at the world around us or others. We also emotionally distance from people. If you feel yourself just slowly emotionally distancing, ask yourself, am I scared at the moment? And then our productivity is often affected. Now, we think of fear making us less productive, wanting to curl in a ball and avoid things, but also fear can make us overproductive, just focus on tasks, not wanting to do anything else, not able to sit down. If you're trying to get in touch with fear, you can try journaling or talking to somebody or painting, and that can help to recognise fear. Step 2, label fear. Labelling fear, step 2. Labelling fear starts the self-regulation process. It stimulates your frontal lobe, which sends neurons, which are brain cells, to calm your threat response. Labelling your fear focuses you on the problem, instead of being focused on who you're angry about, or if only's in the past, or what ifs in the future. It helps you to take responsibility for the present. One way you can start labelling it is talking to somebody using a feeling word. I feel about this situation. For example, I feel scared that my dad's on his own. Sometimes labelling what we're experiencing as fear can feel very overwhelming. So sometimes just saying, there's that fear, can help to put a bit of emotional distance between us. Labelling fear is like anything, it just requires practice. We're all going to experience fear. It's not weak to experience fear and to label it. It means you're human and you have integrity. Let's go to step 3. This is a step that most people really struggle with. Accept your fear. Step 3. Accept your fear. Acceptance means no judging, no shoulds, no guilt, no frustration, no denying. We have many unwritten rules about negative emotions. But actually, we're told in Romans 15, accept one another as Christ accepts you. Christ accepts our negative emotions. Lots of people in the Bible, especially David, accepts his negative emotions. Acceptance again is huge at self-regulation. In fact, research has indicated that acceptance is really important in developing resilience. Acceptance doesn't mean fear is going to be in charge. In fact, acceptance takes fear out of the driving seat. It decreases your threat response. We're getting frustrated with your fear, angry at your fear actually increases the threat response. We encourage clients to actually put their hand over their heart and say, oh, I'm sorry you're scared right now. Being your own best friend. Just like in Romans 12, we mourn with those who mourn. We actually struggle to be compassionate to ourselves when we're experiencing strong negative emotions. So I encourage you, be compassionate with you. Accept your emotion. I think acceptance is more courageous than minimizing or denying. That takes us to step 4. Step 4, expressing your fear. Journaling has been shown to really help people's well-being. So if you're able to journal about what you're scared about, that will be really helpful. Telling somebody, particularly if they're empathetic, is really helpful too. And does again a lot to help self-regulation. And even better, it produces deep emotional connection, which again, we know from neuroscience, calms our threat response. David was very good at expressing his fear in the Psalms to God. Express your fear to God. Let him know what you're afraid of. Let me just say something here about the difference between expressing your fear and ruminating. Expressing your fear is telling a few people about it. Ruminating is telling 20 people, or one person 20 times, or yourself 20 times. Expressing your fear calms your threat response. Ruminating increases your threat response. It leads you to hopelessness and powerlessness. This is because emotion can be written emotion, energy that drives behaviour. When we love people, we can move towards them. When we're fearful, we run away. If you never decide on a behaviour and you just ruminate, you end up feeling powerless. We notice with David, he might express his fear and his anger towards God through the psalm, but at the end, he'll decide what to do, often to trust in God's love for him. And that takes us to step 5, take action. Step 5, take action. As we look at this, we need to know what the problem is. Fear can be an overwhelming, untangible dread. We need to contain it a bit, to actually ask ourselves, what is it I'm afraid of? Sometimes going back to look at what triggered us. Was it something on the news, something somebody said, something I was thinking about, so that we can be specific. And we then encourage clients to then change their language and say, what is it I'm concerned about? Move it to a concern, something you're concerned about, and then to ask these magic words, what can I do about it? Fear makes you feel powerless. It actually shuts down this frontal lobe. But actually, when you ask that question, what can I do about it? You activate this lobe. It starts problem solving. And as you've gathered, it automatically calms the threat response. It's a really important question to ask. And in Timothy 1:7, we're told by Paul, for God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love and self-discipline. We want to live in power. So, some things, when you ask that, we can think what we can do about something about them. Like, if I'm lonely, I can maybe video more friends. I can help the NHS and volunteer by calling people who are isolated at home. I can deliver groceries. If I'm scared for my health, I can look up the NHS guidelines and stick to them. If what ifs are triggering me, I can think about what I'm thinking about and distract myself. If my fear is being triggered by imagining catastrophic outcomes at night, I can learn to deep breathe and focus on the things I'm grateful for in the day. But there's some things that we can't do anything about. This is really hard. But there is a very courageous action that we can do, which is letting go. Letting go actually disobeys the fear and again hugely calms our threat response. Do you know, obeying fear, doing what it wants, thinking more about it, actually increases the fear, but disobeying it decreases it. It wants you to think more about it or do more what-if scenarios, but letting go, accepting it's something you can't control, calms your threat response and actually helps you then to be able to think of little things you can do in the situation that will make a difference. Letting go is very courageous. Matthew 6:34 says, therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Let go of tomorrow. We may have to grieve because it's letting go of controlling something and accepting a change in expectations, accepting loss. It can be very hard, but each time we're triggered with fear, we can practice being compassionate with ourselves, being powerful to change the things we can and to accept the things we can't change and to let go. Finally, taking action involves meditating on God's love for us. In 1 John 4, we're told love drives out fear. And again, neuroscience supports the Bible. Professor Newberg in Pennsylvania has done a small study, so it's not conclusive, but his functional MRI scans showed that those that meditated on a God who loved them had brain changes after 30 days of 12 minutes meditation a day on a God who loves them. And part of those changes were decreasing the activity of the threat response. Love does drive out fear. So I hope that's been helpful. I'm going to end our time together by just reading a prayer that I think is very helpful for all of us to say frequently during these times, and that's the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever and ever in the next. Amen. If you would like to see more videos like this, you can find them at rewirelifecoaching.com. God bless you.